Good morning, Coalition of Concerned Republicans. Welcome to Restoring Our American Republic. It's June the 11th, and Election Day is coming up fast. Tomorrow, June the 12th, Friday, at 12 o'clock noon, is the end of the registration deadline for candidates running in the 2026 election. The primary election date is August the 18th. So let's get those timelines in order. If candidates have not qualified to run, and maybe Chuck and I will talk about that a little bit in our comments today, what does it mean to be qualified versus filed? But if they don't qualify by tomorrow at 12 o'clock noon, then they will not be on the ballot. That's point number one. Then we have Election Day on August the 18th, which is another big deal for the primaries, knowing that in Lake County, Florida, oftentimes the elections are decided in the primary because it's unlikely that any party affiliation other than Republican will win in the general election. So this is a really big deal when it comes over to this rapid timeline that is approaching. But let me just tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that Chuck Benoit and I really appreciate you watching this video and your participation. We encourage you to like and subscribe, of course, but also comment, because we're very interested in your opinions. Your concerns and opinions matter to us, and would like to know what you're thinking. So please comment in the various different comment portals there. So it's really interesting, ladies and gentlemen, that the mail-in ballots for military people and people who are out of the country will be mailed from the Supervisor of Elections office on July the 2nd. So that's a big deal. But even a bigger deal than that is that mail-in ballots to all other voters will be mailed on July the 10th. So given that today is June the 11th, we have 19 days to the end of June. And then on July the 10th, 10 days later, the mail-in ballots go out, which means within 30 days from today, the Supervisor of Elections will begin receiving ballots. So that puts these candidates under a really hot timeline. People are going to be voting in 30 days or less, based on what I just explained. So that really puts these candidates under a timeline. So with that being said, I just want you to know that last night, the Lake County Federated Republican Women had a forum. And basically, when you walked into the room, the candidates all had tables very similar to a hobnob or whatever other political events you've been to. And then the organization, Lake Federated Republican Women, gave the candidates 2 minutes at the microphone, which is really obviously inadequate for a candidate to make his or her case for public office in 2 minutes. And of course, in that situation, what we got was the same thing. I'm a Christian. I'm married, been married for a long time. I've got kids and grandkids. I was a business owner, or I've served in public office, and the same stuff that everybody typically says. So there's no way to really differentiate one candidate from another in a 2-minute speech. So the event was a big success. I just really want to thank Sue Parent and her organizing team for putting it on. The Lake Federated Republican Women always do a great job of that. And with that being said, I'm going to bring Chuck Benoit in. Chuck and I were there last night, and let's get Chuck's opening comments on what he took away from the event. Chuck, what do you think?
Yeah, well, thanks, Mike. And it was very interesting and very awkward at the same time. The way the system was set up, people were all over the room, and the candidates that were giving their 2-minute stump speech was in the corner of the room, and there was so much activity going on and chatting and this and that and the other, along with a very difficult microphone, audio system. it was very, very hard to center in on what people were saying, or even, I mean, it was almost like the audience was giving little to no respect for the person who was giving his little speech or her speech. So, with that in mind, I feel the same way you did. Really didn't get any, from very few of them, we didn't really get anything special. It was just, I'm a good guy, vote for me kind of thing. And that of course speaks to the candidates more than it does to the late federated women. That's not what I'm talking about there.
I agree with that 100%, Chuck.
Yeah.
So very interesting. So, Chuck, I'm just curious, are there any particular races that you'd like to talk about, or do we need to talk more about this? Why don't we do this, Chuck? Why don't we get into the subject that we were talking about off camera and talk about how the Department of Motor Vehicles and driver's license registration can affect voter registrations, Chuck? Would you walk us through that real quick?
I'll do the best I can. The bottom line is, I think it started last year. If you have a new driver's license, if you renewed your driver's license sometime last year. Now, my wife renewed hers in late 2025, and it's affecting her. I renewed mine in early 26. It's affecting me. The bottom line is, I'm not registered to vote. And my wife isn't registered to vote. And if I go in for the primary, they may not let me vote. I have to go to either lakevotes.gov or registertovoteflorida.gov, and I have to update. It says the little box to select is record update. So you have to basically go in and renew your registration with your new Florida driver's license. Now that's a big deal, because by now you would think that the supervisor of elections would have had quite a bit of a note to us. There should be some sort of a campaign telling us that we're not registered to vote. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people who've renewed their driver's license recently. Like I said, both my wife and me are caught up in this. And, I started the process and was uncomfortable, so stopped. But I think I was on the right path, and that is to update your records. You feel like you're re-registering to vote. It just felt like I was registering again, and I didn't know if that was right. But I'm starting out with record update change. That's the box I started with. So the only thing I can do, and anyone else, I guess, is to continue down that frame. You can do it online, even though the lady from the SOE last night said you couldn't. I called today and they said we could. But she was also unclear. She said, well, at the end, either you're going to have to print out your form and mail it to us, or if they let you save it, then we get it. Well, you know something? That doesn't give me any encouragement at all. So I don't.
But let's get to the root of the problem here, Chuck. At the end of the day, the reason this is all problematic is because the Department of Motor Vehicles has changed its policy on voter registration numbers. I got my license to drive in Florida when I was 15 years old, a long time ago for the record. And my driver's license number's been the same all the time. I actually left the state of Florida for a couple of years and came back. And when I got my Florida driver's license on my return to Florida, they reinitiated the same driver's license number. I can recite it to you right now if I wanted to. But now when you go to get a new driver's license number, and they're saying that as a security protection against identity theft, that they're changing your driver's license number. So for people like me who have had the same driver's license number their whole life, when you go in and renew your driver's license, you're going to get a new driver's license number. And then according to Florida law, one of the methods for the supervisor of elections validating your voter registration is according to the last 4 digits of your driver's license. And if your driver's license number has changed and the supervisor of elections attempts to validate your eligibility by reconciling your application with your driver's license number, then those 4 digits have changed and you would be deemed unverifiable, Chuck. And that is what actually causes the problem. So I'm saying to you, learning about this very close to the registration deadline is a problem, Chuck.
Yeah, of course, that's the issue. It's like how many of us are affected and how quickly can the word get out. And so please, again, all you people out there, like and share the program, because you may be one or someone that you know or love may be X'd out of this, especially primary. By then you'll know if you try to vote during the primary and they don't let you. I'm sure you're going to be very unhappy about that. So like and share the program, get the word out.
Well, let me just tell you something, Chuck. My birthday is August the 17th on a Sunday, on Monday, prior to August the 18th, which is Election Day, and early voting begins August the 8th and ends on August the 15th. So if I vote, let's just say I procrastinate on renewing my driver's license and I go into the voting, I vote early, let's just say, and I show up at the polling place, my driver's license number will be valid and had not changed. So I shouldn't have a problem voting. But if I do that, I'm pushing the envelope on the renewal of my driver's license, which is way more important to me. Of course, voting is like crucially important to me, don't get me wrong. But, that because of my birth date and all that and the timelines associated, it does, it's an interesting little quagmire.
For you, yeah.
But at the end of the day, fortunately, we learned last night from Celia, who works in the Supervisor of Elections office, that we have to go through this. So now my response to what we learned is that I'm going to go down and get my driver's license renewed as soon as possible and pop into the supervisor's office and re-register, because that's what I have to do.
Yeah.
Right, Chuck?
Absolutely. Well, many of us have to do that. I included, although I am going to try to do it online. We'll see.
That's your call. For me personally, I'm going to want the Supervisor of Elections staff to look me in the eyes and tell me that I'm registered to vote, because I don't want to walk into a polling place and have a problem.
Yeah, I get it.
And that's just me, Chuck.
I assure
and of course,
you,
I'm close.
I assure you that I will be assured before I finish. So
I'm sure you will.
Yeah.
I know you pretty well, Chuck,
Yeah,
and I'm sure
yeah.
that you are not going to leave any I's undotted or T's uncrossed, right?
There you go. There you go. Well,
Okay, Chuck. So let me ask you a question. What about which of these you want to talk about county commission races, or do you want to talk about congressional races, Chuck?
why don't we start at the top? We'll talk about governor races.
Okay, there you go. That's a good one.
Well,
That's
we
a good
had
one.
there were 9 people there running for governor, and some of the top contenders weren't there. Did you have anybody in the governor's races that kind of jumped out at you?
Well, it's interesting, Chuck. You know how when you get to the point where we are, where most of these people, right? And you walk into a forum like that, where all the candidates have tables, and all of the attendees can walk around from table to table and have a personal one-on-one chat with the various different candidates. When I walked into the room, it just so happened that Paul Renner's, I'll call it a booth, was there. And of course, I've had one-on-one discussions with Paul Renner since his candidacy a few times,
Yeah.
right? So, so anyway, Paul Renner was great. He came over, shook my hand, even though we've had some contentious conversations based on his record as the Speaker of the House, and we've talked about the politics behind the decisions that he made as Speaker of the House. But he came over. He was very friendly. He shook my hand. He appeared like he was happy to see me.
Yeah.
And long story short, Paul Renner is qualified to be the governor, right? He served in the Florida House. He was the Speaker of the Florida House, so he knows how the process, the legislative process works, which is very beneficial to a governor. And he's had access to, I want to use the word all, but let's just say the majority of the administrative functions that a governor has to do, because he was involved in it on the legislative side. So, for example, for me, disaster relief is like one of my top priorities for a governor. In Florida, if you can't handle hurricanes and disaster relief, then you don't need to be the governor.
Yeah.
And Paul brings a lot of that to the table. And, he's morally, I think he's a grounded person. But, it's also interesting, Chuck, that the politics really moves a lot of these faith-based candidates like Renner and Kerry Baker for the record, right? When they get into the legislature, they kind of just really don't lean on their faith as to the decisions that they make. And that's really concerning for me. And when I'm choosing my gubernatorial candidate and my congressional candidates, I'm going to want to know, not only are they believers, but they lean into their faith when the decision-making time happens, right?
That's a big deal, Mike.
And that is probably my number one,
Yeah.
right? So as we run toward the finish line, which in my calendar is August the 18th, you and I, in the event that we bring these candidates on and they're willing to come on and talk about it, that's what I'm going to want to talk about, Chuck. That's going to be my number one. Tell me, how you differentiate between your faith and the secular responsibilities of running government, and let them lean into that and tell us, will they honor their faith when they make decisions legislatively, Chuck?
Yeah, well, they don't even, natural law, which we've talked about in the past over and over and over again, is really the issue. The issue is natural law. Natural law prevents absurdities from the equation. And if they're not if they're unwilling to stand by natural law, the laws of nature and nature's God as the foundations for our governing, for all of our laws, I don't understand what they mean when they say we secular things. There's nothing secular about laws of nature and nature's God. I mean, it is secular. It's secular in the sense, Mike, that any nation, as well as any individual who violates natural law, finds out there's a lot of consequences to that. And
let me drill down into that, Chuck. Okay? Because this is what people forget, or what people like to ignore or do not want to enter into their psychology when they're making decisions. Okay? Because economics is natural law too. And that's where we lose them, right? When people go in there and they start making decisions that violate the natural laws of economics, then it takes us off track. And that means, for example, my big deal is subsidizing housing purchases in undersupplied, overpriced markets. If you don't think that that's a violation of natural law, then I don't want you to be my governor or my legislator, period. Right?
Right.
And then with people think that money doesn't come under the category of natural law, but it totally does, Chuck.
Yeah, of course it does. Absolutely. We've talked about this before. Our time just flies right by. So there are a couple other things we'd like to continue to talk about. But first of all, is regarding, just to finish up with the governors, for whatever reasons, Bobby Williams just keeps jumping out at me. I don't know what kind of a long shot he is, but he just seems very, very reasonable. And he is one of those guys that when he got up and had his 2 minutes, I felt like he did kind of generate a little bit of activity regarding the, his perspective on things, and not just, oh, I'm a Christian and I'm a father and I'm a grandfather or whatever everyone else was saying. I did kind of get something from him that again is kind of resonating with me. I didn't know if anybody resonated with you at all.
Well, let's just on the same tract of conversation, why don't you tell us who got the most applause when they hit the microphone last night, Chuck?
Yeah, well, we can get right to that too. Literally, now, people listen. Everybody got very, very polite applause. Everybody got polite applause. But there was one particular candidate who the room erupted for, and that was Matt the Welder. Now, why is it that the Republican Party of Florida went out of its way to call a special election or a special meeting to get behind and support Wilton Simpson to actually, what's the word I'm looking for, Mike? I don't know why. Endorse. They had to endorse Wilton Simpson, this gentleman who almost everybody I know knows his name, against Matt the Welder. I mean, they're scared to death of Matt the Welder. Why is that? And why, along with that, did Matt the Welder get the largest and most generous applause last night? Thunderous might be a good
applause. Yeah. Well, first of all, Chuck, you can't leave out of this conversation that they literally changed the election law.
Yep.
Specifically to cancel Matt Taylor, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. When you walk into that ballot box, you're not going to see Matt the Welder on the ballot. You're going to see Matt Taylor. Very important to remember, Matt Taylor, because the legislature passed a law and the governor signed it into law stating that if you change your name within the last 12 months prior to the registration, the qualifying period, then you're ineligible to run for office. So that this is another situation where the DeSantis administration was willing to change the law to interfere in elections against a specific candidate, Matt Taylor, who changed his name to Matt the Welder as a marketing antic, a market stunt. And that so annoyed and scared, I would suggest, Wilton Simpson and the Florida legislature and maybe the governor and the cabinet and the Republican Party of Florida that they coalesced and actually changed the law to keep this guy off the ballot. And the reason is because this guy is a master marketer is what he is, Chuck. And that's the reason why he's getting so much traction around the state. And I'll be honest with you, Chuck, I'm going to go ahead and compare the Bobby Williams race to Matt the Welder's race, Matt Taylor's race, because if Bobby Williams was as good of a marketer as Matt Taylor, then I would suggest that Bobby Williams would have a much higher probability of getting elected because the grassroots really love the guy. And just like they love Matt Taylor, the grassroots loves Matt Taylor. But Bobby Williams is kind of sticking to more conventional campaign activities, while Matt Taylor, also known as Matt the Welder, is really crushing it in social media and new marketing techniques. So that's what I would say to you. And we got into this conversation when we were talking about Bobby Williams, but we couldn't not address Matt Taylor in the same conversation. So that's where I'm at, Chuck. And these guys are just absolutely afraid of Matt Taylor. And I'm suggesting that Bobby Williams has a lot of traction too. Chuck.
Yeah, well, that's exactly how I feel. It just seems like he kind of just seemed a little bit out in front of the crowd. There were two other candidates who surprised me by their non-attendance, and one of them was Anthony Sabatini. he did not have a table, nor did he attend the meeting. I don't know. I'm hearing different rumblings, and I don't want to be anyone who starts any rumors or anything. But did you feel that was a bit odd that Anthony wasn't there last night?
Who was the other candidate you were concerned about in his absence?
Well, just again because I know him and was surprised. Tom Vale, who's running against Taylor Yarkowski for District 25, House Seat 25. He wasn't there either, and we thought possibly he was too late to the party, but it was still odd to me that either and both of those were not there last night.
Well, Tom Vale is new. He just filed a couple days ago, so I'm sure that the Lake Federated Republican Women had a registration cutoff date for the candidates so they could get their room layouts and all that kind of stuff organized. So it could be that Tom just didn't get in under the wire, and it could also be that Tom, I'm sure there was a registration fee, and the Federated Women they got paid by the candidates to be there, and maybe Tom just didn't feel like with his late entry that was a good use of his limited campaign funds. Anthony, on the other hand, you can never, when you're trying to figure out what's going on in Anthony Sabatini's head, you can never default to ignorance or anything like that. Anthony is a master strategist, so we know that whatever he's doing very intentionally, and he's looking at all the different variables and stuff. So I know that Anthony is very disappointed that he has to run against Kerry Baker.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. And then, of course, I was surprised that Anthony did not qualify. And, of course, he's got until tomorrow at noon to qualify. But keep in mind, when you and I checked earlier in the week, Tuesday, Kerry Baker hadn't qualified either. So I'm not concerned about whether Anthony will qualify or not. But, of course, then you have the resign to run piece. And Anthony is in an appellate court case challenging whether he needs to resign from his county commission seat to run for this federal office or not. We can talk. That's a long debate with not a lot of really verifiable information from people like you and me who are not election lawyers. But this is Anthony, and Anthony is, he's taken on a lot of risk there.
Yeah.
I mean, he could lose his job as a county commissioner.
And still not win the race.
If he doesn't qualify by tomorrow at noon, he won't be able to run. So he's got a lot on the line right now. And again, keep in mind that Anthony did have time to register with the Lake Federated Republican Women, and Leesburg, where the event was held at the Venetian Center in Leesburg, is in the heart of Congressional District 11, with a lot of the district to the north and a lot of the district to the south. So if you want to give access to your constituents, then you couldn't ask for a better location than the Venetian Center. That is the heart of CD11. And I promise you that people who showed up for this event noticed that Anthony Sabatini wasn't there, Chuck.
Yeah, I'm sure they did. Well, as far as you did kind of talk about the commissioner races, there was two of them. We have just a minute or two left. The two incumbents seem to handle themselves very, very well. Each of them have someone that's running against them, and I don't know. I didn't see anything overly exciting coming from them. A little bit of whining and complaining, but it seemed to me that what they were complaining about is the idea that the state's taking over so much of the responsibility. I don't know if you can blame the county commissioners for that.
Well, that's a big subject too. We could do a whole show on that topic.
And we have.
I think we should. We have, but actually, what is the role of the county commissioners in the overreach of state government into growth management practices? That's we haven't really talked about that in detail. We may have made some comments here and there, about what the commissioners should or shouldn't, what they should be doing, what are they not doing, et cetera. But obviously, the county commissioners from all over the state of Florida have not pushed back against the state government on the overreach of state influence over growth management. And I personally believe that the commissioners should be pushing back on that. And, Chuck, it doesn't mean that when you push back against something, doesn't mean that your hair on fire, you're calling people names, you're cursing into microphones. That's not what that means. That means that you're making an educated rebuttal argument to what's going on, and you do leverage your political influence. So, state senators, state reps, governor candidates, cabinet candidates, if you don't see this the way we see it, yes, we will push back against you politically. Okay? And, county commissioners have a lot of influence in Lake County. They run countywide, and it's a big deal. But I'm challenging you. I'll bet you, Chuck, and I'm not going to put you on the spot, but I bet you most people who were at that event last night, if you asked them this morning the name of the county commission candidate running against Sean Parks, most people could not tell you that person's name. And I think to a lesser degree, but the candidate running against Leslie Campione as well. Most people will never know that guy's name. They'll see it on the ballot. They'll say, I don't know who this guy is. And they'll check Leslie because they know who she is. You know what I mean? And the same with Sean Parks. They're going to, walk into the ballot. They're going to see a name they know and a name they don't know. And they're going to check the box of the name they know. Yeah. And that's just the way elections work, ladies and gentlemen.
Pretty
For
much.
better or worse, that's how it works. Most voters do not do a lot of homework before they walk into that polling booth, Chuck Benoit.
Right. So we have kind of gone over our little 30-minute thing. Do you want to go ahead and give us a final update, and certainly include the idea of needing to renew the registration for voting?
Ladies and gentlemen, if your driver's license has expired or you've made any changes to your driver's license since August of 2025, you must re-register to vote. So get out there and do that. And now, Chuck, we're 24 hours before the registration deadline, the qualifying period ends for the 2026 election cycle. And I'm hoping when it's all over, I don't have massive feelings of regret for not running, but I might. So there you go.
Well, thank you, Mike Levine, and thank you all again for tuning into our twice weekly live stream. Please, again, follow us on Facebook and X at Restore Our Rep 76. Check us out on YouTube at Restoring Our American Republic -ROAR. Please like and share the program, and remember, if you're unwilling to govern yourself, you will be governed by tyrants. Until next time, God bless you, God bless President Donald J. Trump, and God bless America.